The 1920s was an era of political, social, and economic significance. The first era of the 1920s was Prohibition. What was Prohibition? Prohibition was the era of U.S. where the government passed an amendment to make the manufacturing, sale, and transportation of alcohol illegal. The reason the government passed this was to help eliminate alcoholism, saloon-based political corruption, and family violence. 46 out of the 50 states adopted prohibition. The majority of the population just ignored it. The next section is political extremists. During the 20s, specifically in 1922, the extremist group called the Ku Klux Klan reached its all-time high in the amount of members, which was 4 million. They were not just anti-black, but were anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, xenophobic, and anti-organized labor. The next section is Jazz Age. During the 20s, music was changing, and this change led to the birth of jazz. Jazz relies on improvisation and syncopated rhythms. The average instrumentation of a 1920s jazz band consisted of the trumpet, trombone, saxophone, drum, and a double bass guitar. The next section is the politics. Crazy stuff. During the 20s, the politics were a total mess during Warren Harding's presidency. His administration was highly corrupt, and their most famous scandal was called the Teapot Scandal, where one of his secretaries gave private oil land to two separate oil drilling companies without permission, which is a lot of money, a lot of oil. The next section is women in the 1920s. During the 20s, women and women's fashion became more relaxed and less strict. Breezy, slangy, and informal in manner, slim and boyish in form, covered in silk and fur that clung to her as close as onion skin, with carmine cheeks and lips, plucked eyebrows, and close-fitting helmet of hair. Gay, plucky, and confident, Preston Slauson said. The Great Crusade, after 1930, this changed how America perceived women and helped Nellie Taylor Rose to become the first governor of Wyoming on January 5th, 1925. The next section is New Technology. At the turn of the 19th century, technology was rapidly improving and changing. In 1920 alone, there were 86,575 design and utility patent applications, but only 39,542 were accepted. In 1927, the Spirit of St. Louis, which was a Ryan M2 monoplane. This plane flew the world's first solo, non-stop transatlantic flight. The total flight time was 33 and a half hours. The next section is New Entertainment. At the start of the 20s, silent films were popular. Then talkies became a thing, which people talked over the movies to help gain realism on it. And then as technology progressed, they made an invention called the Vitaphone, which was a multi-purpose apparatus which made playing video and audio at the same time, parallel, together, without having two separate machines, which was big for its time. And it really helped the music industry and the video industry, every industry, the movie industry. The next section is the Harlem Renaissance. During 1914, the African American population of Harlem was 50,000, and by 1930, it was at 200,000. In 1927, James Weldon Johnson published God's Trombones. This is a collection of 7 sermons, including Listen, Lord, A Prayer, Noah Built the Ark, and Let My People Go. The next section is probably the most well-known during the 20s, called Organized Crime. This is good stuff. During the 1920s, after Prohibition was passed, people wanted alcohol. So people started to make their own alcohol, but some people thought they could capitalize off of this. And they did. They made a lot of money off of it. But it was illegal. So people took advantage of the cops trying to bust them. And at 10:30 on Valentine's Day, Al Capone and his gang shot 7 men at 2122 North Clark Street in Lincoln Park on Chicago's north side. The next section is Signs of Trouble, which is leading into the Great Depression. The trouble in question was the stock market and the economy. After the great surge of economic expansion hit during the 1920s, on October 29th, 1929, was when investors at the New York Stock Exchange sold over 16 million shares in a single day because the stock market was going down big time. The next section is Arts and Literature. Art from the 1920s represented many styles, including Dadaism, Cubism, Expressionism, Realism, Impressionism, and Surrealism. On November 5th, 1929, the first American writer to be awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature was Sinclair Lewis. Yes. And the next section is the generalization of the 1920s, called the Age of Excess. During the Age of Excess, the people of the United States were less lenient with their money and splurged a bit during the post-war era, after World War I. The people spent their money on consumer goods such as automobiles and home electric appliances, which helped the economy. This time also harbored a boom in construction, building taller buildings. During this decade, the U.S. economy grew 42% and also harbored the beginning of the American automobile and airline industry.